Freeze.
And we are live.
Are we live?
We're waiting on
we are live. Where's our music? Oh my God.
Oh, we're live without music.
Oh my goodness.
Sorry. Hi, everybody. Took us by surprise. Welcome to the Witches Movie Coven. Grab your goat, grab a drink, grab some popcorn, because witches are going to talk about witches in movies and witchy movies and television shows. I am so sorry. I'm standing here going, why don't we freeze? We haven't started yet. Oh, we have. Hi, everybody out there. I am Patti Negri. I am one of your hosts. You may know me from The Witching Hour or my TV stuff, but I am thrilled to be here and part of the Witches Movie Coven. We have our regular panelist, Miss Courtney Buckley, also Scared and Alone, Ghost Bait. We have Heather Greene, author of the book on witches in movies. We have Richard-Lael Lillard, the gentleman psychic, and slightly different today. Instead of Jason Mankey, we have a dear and wonderful friend. We have the one and only Lilith Dorsey jumping in today. Thank you, Lilith.
Hello. I don't have a goat, but I have a dog.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, this is great. We are thrilled to have you here. And thank you, everybody. And again, forgive that opening. That'll be in our blooper roll, I'm sure. I could have been worse. I was really ready to go worse. So anyway, let's get right into it today, and then we could do our check-ins later. I like to mix it up every day a little bit different. So this week's movie is Angel Heart. Angel Heart. Way back in the 1980s. I did not realize it was so long ago. It felt more modern to that. Not modern, not like it was a modern movie, but it felt more recent than that. So that like less 40, 50 years flew by really fast. So this is an American movie, right? So do you have any information on it from your book, Miss Heather?
Well, a couple of things I'd like to say about this movie, just to put it into context of when it was released, which is key to some of the things that you see in the movie. It is a 1987 movie, which is just at the point where Hollywood was catching up with the Satanic Panic. So no surprise if you know that concept, because this movie does deal with signing a pact with Satan. It is a satanic witchcraft movie. They are linking magic and magical practices, including various forms of that, including voodoo in this case, they're paralleling them to Satanism, which was very common at this time. And that was a thing that was fearful. We've talked about the Satanic Panic a lot of times. So this is happening right at the beginning of Hollywood's reinvigoration of the witchcraft film, of the magic film. Okay, so that's what you're finding here. This is actually, and we'll get into this a little bit later, I'm sure, when Lilith starts to talk about voodoo and its representation in this film. But this is also a different and a movement forward in ways. It's a little bit more complex than the average representation of voodoo, in my experience and research. It's not perfect. There are problems, obviously, and we'll talk about that. But this is also a little bit different. They do something slightly different in terms of the complexity in dealing with that. The other piece of this is Lisa Bonet. Many of you who are around when this movie was released know that this kind of tumbled her career a lot because of her two scenes. One was the ritual scene where she is killing and where she does the blood with the chicken and all of that stuff, as well as the sex scene that's later on in the film with Mickey Rourke. So you have these two things. They definitely tumbled her career, so to speak. She was well known for her role in The Cosby Show, which was probably the most popular show at the time, and I personally loved watching that show. So I remember this very vividly when this happened. And I also remember when this movie came out and seeing it for the first time, being allowed to see it and thinking, oh my goodness, I saw the most risque film I've ever seen. Now watching it now, I'm like, oh yeah, okay. But 1987, I was not aware of witchcraft in a functional way. I was not aware of voodoo outside of what I was told by Hollywood. I was not aware of a lot of things. And of course, movies have changed, so the context have changed. But this is a 1987 movie. This was when Witches of Eastwick came out. This is when witchcraft became demonized on a high level, especially female witches at this point in time. So that's our context. And then we can, so now I say, discuss.
Okay.
Well, could I just interject here and tell a little bit of the plot points for those of us at home who may not have seen the film? If that's okay, I will proceed. So the film is about this 1950s private eye who is charged with finding someone. He lives in New York, and he is charged with finding this person who's disappeared sometime during the World War II. And his employer is this mysterious person named Louis Cyphre. And so he sends him from New York down to New Orleans, where he is trying to find out where this man is, who this man is, find out all of his life. And he turns out that every time he gets close to anyone that the man that he knew, the man that he's after, anytime he gets close to someone that the man knew, they end up by dying in a horrible way. One man gets choked to death on his private bits. And that's one of the more gruesome of the deaths, but you don't actually see it. But of course, everyone dies. And then, of course, you find out that this man that he is in pursuit of, he was a crooner back during the war, and he became really famous because he had a pact with the devil himself. Mephistopheles is a lot in Brooklyn. So he has this pact with this devil character, and then of course we find out that the man who was in New Orleans ended up by finding a soldier, took him back to his hotel room, did a ritual, killed him, and ate his heart. And then swapped places. He basically took on his soul, killing this other person. And then we find out, spoiler alert, we find out that actually the man who is investigating this croner who's disappeared is that man. He is Harry Angel. I mean, Harry and the Hendersons, no. Harry Angel, yes, he's a Harry Angel. And he's and then of course in the interim, he meets the woman who was on the Cosby Show, and he has intercourse with her. And then of course we find out that she was his daughter. And if she wasn't my daughter, I might be dating her. Okay.
Oh, wow.
Can I interject something here which I left out, which is key to understanding? There's so much to this movie, and then I'll be quiet. There's so many details to this movie, whether you like it or not, and we can get to those points. But this is also for film junkies. This was filmed as to be a film noir. It's very much, and that is something that's so striking about the way this was filmed. The cinematography and the film aspect of this is so vitally important that that the fans and the landscape and the lighting are almost characters in and of themselves in this film, which is a very striking piece. I love film noir. It's one of my favorite, and I don't call it a genre. It's actually an infection, but that's a whole nother film geek conversation. But I love the way what film noir does to films, and he used that. The director used that in it. It's one of the most brilliant combinations of capturing that 1940s war style, and even the private eye researching. That's all very 1940s film noir. So it's he did capture all of that. Of course, it's 1980s. It's not a film noir, although it really works with that to its advantage, I would argue. But anyway, that's another sort of, geeky piece of this.
Okay, so I have to say thank you to Richard-Lael for that just compelling retelling of the movie, because I did not finish it, partially because I ran out of time. I've had a lot going on this week, but also partially because it was so painful to watch. I felt like the minute, for me at least, like the minute I heard his name was Harold Angel, I was like, okay, I think the best part of this movie for me, for the little bit that I did watch, I mean, I watched like half of it, but was the ads on Pluto. Honestly, I would have rather sat through The Witch That Came from the Sea. Again.
No, absolutely not.
Okay,
Courtney?
Here's the thing, though. Now that Richard-Lael has been talking about people eating hearts and the bits part, like maybe I should go back and watch it because I clearly didn't get there. But like, there was that part with like the lady he was talking. Like, I just couldn't follow it at all. It was, I don't know. It didn't capture me in any way until there was the lady all in her clothes walking into the ocean singing. I was like, okay, that's a vibe. Like, I like her, but. Other than that, like it was hard to follow, I thought.
No, I mean, I thought it was brilliant, but that's because it's Wednesday and anything can happen on Wednesdays.
Mouseketeers, anything can happen day. Yeah.
Now, on the opposite of that, I really liked it. I got confused here and there because I think that's that whole style. You're just experiencing it. You haven't figured it out yet, but you don't figure it out anyway until the end is how I am. But I really liked the film noir style of it, that he was that gumshoe guy. He was all those things you saw in old movies. But then they're set in New Orleans, and they were set with, you felt the sticky, you felt the magic. I felt everything. So I know that was created by the acting and the lighting and the colors and the sets, but I stepped right into it.
And I loved Robert De Niro as Louis Cyphre. He was, and I loved just the nails, and he would have the cane. And of course, as Satan, he is in the church, and the guy says, "No, I'm an atheist. I don't believe in any of this." And he goes, "Oh, really? Well, that's interesting." So I loved the fact that Louis Cyphre is sitting in this Catholic church, just taking it all in. Well, I had a speaking engagement in Baton Rouge, he said. So I thought I'd come down and check your what was it? Check your work so far. Check your status. Check whatever it was. But yeah, Robert De Niro as Louis Cyphre. The best. And I loved his nails. I'm so peanut butter and jealous because I didn't do my nails.
He had definitely 80s style acrylics. He had
the nails were something for sure.
Yeah. 80s style acrylics without polish.
I feel like I kept rolling my eyes though. Like it just well, first Harold Angel, I was like, oh my god.
You know, he makes a joke about it. I'm sorry to interrupt, but he makes a joke about that because he goes in to see his employer, Louis Cyphre, and he says, "Oh God, Louis Cyphre, even your name is a dime store joke." So it's Harold Angel and Louis Cyphre. It's hilarious. It's
an Epiphany Proudfoot.
Yeah,
come on. She's the ultimate Epiphany in the movie. Like, you know, if he'd figured that out in the beginning, there wouldn't have been any movie. And, you know, for me, it was, I graduated in 87, stoned as hell, high as heaven. We're the class of 87. And then I went to NYU Film School. And this to me was always the movie that people would bring to me and go, this makes no sense. What's going on in this movie? And it has that noir thing going on, but it also has so many levels. I saw somebody saying, you've got to watch it lots of times, but because there's so much going on in the movie that I can see why you might get bored and turn it off. Because at times it looks like nothing is going on with the movie, or it's just nonsense, you know, like Mammy Carter's and like, what's this, you know? I mean, I think they're tropes, but they're tropes for a reason. You know what I mean? We all know that weird witchy store, and I grew up in Brooklyn, you know, everybody knows that kind of weird, freaky kind of witchiness going on. And we also, if you've been to New Orleans, you know, that kind of like dusky, dirty, you know, here we are, day-to-day living that happens down here.
It's true.
I'm sorry. I was going to go on.
No, I was going to say, and one of the things that I agree completely. There's so many things going on here. There's so many there's so much commentary from a different levels. From the study that I did in magic representation, we can push that aside. But if you go through this movie is just a mishmash and a regurgitation of so many horrors that people were afraid of about America at the time. I mean, you go from dirty streets and dead bodies laying there in New York, two cities that horrify people in many ways and haunt them and horrify them and attract them. You're talking about two cities with so much culture and so much history and so much grit and so much grime that we go between them. New York, of course, where you see a lot of the film noirs, and then we go to New Orleans, which has so much mystery and so much stigma, and for so many reasons. And we see a religion that's demonized. We see sex scenes. We see murder. We see hearts removed. We see dead people, bodies. We see dogs. We see grit. Then we have these old fans that are just barely moving. I mean, it's a gritty, definitely not dark. That's the wrong word. It's just a gritty movie that's just dredging up a lot of things that people don't like, that people are afraid of, and putting them out there in your face and saying, watch this. This is what you people need to deal with. You need to face. And that goes deeper. That goes into the representation of racism and race relations. It gets into religion and various religions. So it's really forcing you, the viewer, to look at all of this stuff flat out, and I think there are levels you can watch this at. So, I think it's a lot deeper than just a horror movie. Oh, here's a horror movie to watch. Definitely.
Yeah. I never even thought of it as a horror movie. I mean, obviously it was, as what I say every week or whenever this is, I can't handle the animal scenes because I just can't. I have to close my eyes, the chicken, the goat. Other than that, I had to close his eyes. He just could not handle that.
I couldn't understand why, though, that Harold Angel was afraid of chickens. I never could understand why he was afraid of chickens.
I know people that are afraid of chickens. It's their feet. Their feet freak people out.
Really?
I don't understand it. I will touch a chicken all day, but something about their weird feet freak people out. It's like a phobia.
I mean, my daughter hates chickens, but I think in the movie it was sort of representative, emblematic of voodoo, right? Like that's the joke. We do chicken right, RITE. So that people represent it as, if you have to have a voodoo ritual, you have to have chickens. And I think it was triggering for Harry Angel on some level, that he just couldn't handle it. Like every time he would get close enough to something that reminded him of his past, he would just sort of, he'd black out and stuff would happen, so he just couldn't hang on.
That makes sense. But also, just freshly moved to New Orleans, coming from New York and coming from Los Angeles, there are chickens that roam around my neighborhood with no homes. They just roam around. And I said to the movers, I said, why are there chickens here? And he said, it's New Orleans. That's why. And I went, but there's chickens. Just every morning I hear the rooster crowing, and I'm sort of taken aback because here I am in this metropolitan area and there are chickens.
Really?
I have chickens under the house. There's a chicken in the post office. My neighbor tried to kill it with a cleaver. And then he thought, okay, this is not a good look. A black man running through the streets with a cleaver. So he went back in the house. But they're all over. You're right. They're all over New Orleans. Yeah. It's chicken
Richard-Lael, I love you so much, and I can't wait to come visit you. But also, now that I know about the chickens, I'm going to have to come to see the chickens.
Amazing. They're beautiful. There's some red ones out here, and there were a couple of roosters which you would think that they would not get along, but they're just out crowing at the morning sun and doing their, what is it called, their sort of scratch and peck and what is that? I don't know. I'm not up on chicken terminology. I mean, terminology maybe, but not chicken.
Could chickens survive in an urban setting by themselves without being fed chicken feed? I mean,
yeah, they just eat bugs and whatever that else is around here all the time. I mean, there's too many roosters, right? Like, because they don't taste as good as the hens. So lots of times people in town will just let them go.
Oh.
My new goal in life, my new top bucket list item is to see the chicken at the post office.
Okay. I live right near the post office. Come visit.
You're getting a visitor, Lilith.
On my way. On my way.
Yeah.
So one thing that I'm curious about, and I think, one thing, we talk about here often is, the magic in the movie itself, and how authentic it is. Now, in this case, and one of the reasons I don't spend a lot of time on Angel Heart and a lot of other movies, and I deal with othering in movies, but I don't deal with specifically getting into voodoo because I'm not a voodoo practitioner. So I can't name out whether I can name out various witchcraft practices, and I can get close, but I'm not a voodoo practitioner. And I specify this in the introduction of my book on that sensitivity. So the curious thing for me here, and Lilith, who I don't know if we said earlier, is actually a voodoo priestess and has been practicing. And she can tell us, and I'm asking this specifically about this movie because I know the witchcraft movies of the 80s do not get anywhere near witchcraft practice that I know of, because it is primarily used as a link to Satanism, as a demonization of magic, and as a way to oppress women. So I would like to know how close they got with, we only really see one ritual, and she does talk about it as a religion, which is a step forward from the 70s and 60s and 50s. But how close did she get? Did they do anything accurate?
No, it's horrible.
I figured.
It's just as horrible as everything else made at that time. But I think that the sexualization is one of the things that really bothers me, because, all the African traditional religions, sex is as separate from religion as it could possibly be. Like, you would never go have a highly sexualized ritual like she had in that, which, was the scandalizing thing of her career, because, and that's just one of those reasons. It's just not respectful. That's something that's kept personal. There's cleansing rites that have to be done before you can go and step into ritual if you have been sexual, either with yourself or others, so like that, I think putting that in there was really crappy. There's a lot of hoodoo things that are in there that I recognize, like I said, going to the hoodoo store to get this, that, or the other thing, that's perfectly a normal thing. But I think that would be similar to a lot of witches' experience, we went to go get, bat's wing or something, which is really a root of some other thing that we're using, that kind of a thing. So that's normal. But I don't think there's anything realistic in there. Yes, animal sacrifice is part of it. But the thing that always gets left out is that normally it's eaten. It's used to cleanse the community. It's, even if it's not eaten by the practitioners, usually it's cooked and then donated to charity or something like that. So this whole kind of sensationalized, sacrifice and sex, none of that is accurate. And the devil itself, like, we don't have a Christian devil really in our religion at all. So that whole thing is messy. But I will say this: when I started in the religion, people would ask my priest, "Oh, is this like Angel Heart?" And he would go, "Yes, it's 100% like that."
Stay away.
I would be like, what? Like, he was great. He would just love to mess with people all the time. So, yeah.
So that really just kind of coincides with everything they did with all of the other forms of magic that I know. Totally just demonizing it, sexualizing it with women specifically. And then, of course, if you look back at voodoo representation and this was one of the first of this period of time. If you go back into the 70s, largely the othering and the use of black and brown bodies in magic was largely linked to over-sexualization, evil, Satan stuff. So this really kind of Now, she does say it's a religion. She does make some statements. We do see it. What was the herb? I recognized it because of you, Lilith. I just want to say
really?
It's Hi John the Conquering Root.
Hi Johnny Conqueror. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, oh, I read Lilith's blog about that. So that's a real thing.
Yeah.
But
it is.
so you had a few little pieces in there, which is what you start to see in the 80s and 90s. Few little pieces that are realistic, but not enough to override the negativity.
I think it's dangerous because it's just enough to people to go, oh yeah, like we know that people use Hi John the Conqueror, so this must be an accurate film, Mm-hmm. I think it's just enough to fool people into thinking that it's an accurate representation if you don't know anything about it.
And there is something to that, Lilith, actually. I heard this podcast today as I was rearranging and cleaning. And she had come up, she said there was a story on Twitter, and this fellow had gone over, well, now it's X, but he'd found this in Eastern European country. He'd found that there were these two soldiers that were actually in love with each other, and they loved each other so much they were buried next to each other. It turns out it was all farcical. And they said, well, it's a love story. It's not going to hurt anybody's feelings. It's not going to make it, it's not going to cause this not to be, people aren't going to take people who are in those relationships seriously. They're not going to mean them, but it does, because what happens is that you put out falsehoods and you put out things that people are already thinking is propaganda. And then they go, oh, well, it's all false and it's all fake and it's all propaganda and it's all witchcraft. It's all evil. It's all the devil. It's all Satan. It's all this thing. And that in the minds does cause harm, because then people can't separate fact from fiction.
I think in the same vein, that's what really upsets me. Obviously not, the same situation, but when we watch movies that constantly reference Salem and, being a tour guide in Salem, as I've talked about many times on our show, like when they get just enough right that it triggers something in people's brains. Oh yeah, I've read about that, or I've heard about that. And then everything else is wrong and people believe it. And then they'll come to Salem and we have to re-educate them on, no one was burned at the stake here, or like, no, all these different falsehoods. And people get like argumentative, like, no, I saw it on this show. Like, it was all these things you talked about, they were right. Okay, but that was not right. Like, so it's the same way as like, I like it if they're going to reference Salem and they change everything about it, or, they keep a name, but everything else is different. So then that feels less dangerous, because it's not so close that people can get confused.
Well, we talk about magic, and if you watch like Harry Potter, or you watch The Wizard of Oz, nobody's going, oh, that's real, that's scary, Harry Potter, okay, that's there was an issue with Harry Potter, but that's another story. But fantasy films that are super fantasy, Lord of the Rings that have magic, people are not saying, they see that as fantasy. They're cutting a line. But when you do the films that are based in the magic films that are based in reality, when they have pieces like Lilith said, St. John's Conquering Root. Did I say that right?
Hi John the Conqueror.
Hi John the Conquering, not St. John. That's a whole nother thing. Hi John the St. John's wort. Anyway, Hi John the Conquering Root, or they use pentacles, or they use something that's realistic enough. We run into more of a discrepancy and more of an issue, but it's getting better. And someone just said there aren't a whole lot of movies. You don't see a whole lot of movies where voodoo is represented. And I actually have a notebook with hundreds of films where voodoo is represented since 1930s, which was when it really started. And I actually, prior to 1930s, voodoo was not represented at all in any recordable films, but 99.9% of them are what we're seeing here. And what Lilith is talking about is the demonization, the linking, the just poorly done. And it hasn't been till recently that I've seen change. And I mean recently, I mean 5 years, 10 years max, where you're starting to see a shift. And I think that coincides with the general magical community in my observation.
Sure.
So I don't know. Lilith can speak more to that from a.
No, I agree. I mean, I do think it's interesting. You got the date of the 30s, you know, and if we look at, yes, Haitian independence occurred back in the late 1700s, but there was occupation during the 30s. There was all this U.S. intervention in Haiti and things like that. So it kind of makes sense that you've got this demonization of this jungle religion, you know, as racist and oppressive as that may be. And I think that, you know, we're finally getting to the point where I think we're allowed to tell our own stories. Somebody mentioned In Search of Voodoo by Jaimon Hounsou, which, you know, obviously famous actor, you know, whatever, Fast and Furious, all of this kind of thing. But he went back to Benin and made a documentary about his homeland and what voodoo was there, and, you know, how it was really important to him to have it portrayed in a positive light. But you know, how many times are people like that going to want to do that? How many times are they going to have the money to do that? All of those things. And I think that's really the key part of the shift. And also, again, it wasn't even until maybe, I think, 5 or 6 years ago that voodoo priests were even allowed to perform weddings and other civil ceremonies in Haiti. So again, we're looking at something that's still, you know, stigmatized by the government, still not looked, I mean, and yay, I'm going to see Patti in a few days in New Orleans. But anybody who knows anything about New Orleans voodoo that's a whole nother bag of, you know, problematic snakes. That's what I'm going to call it. That's my nice way of saying it.
And, you know, Courtney, you've been problem you're fighting with Salem has been going on since Hollywood started. I mean, I can pull up in my big folders records of Salem residents saying, I think I'm frozen. I may be frozen. But I'm not. Okay. We have construction in my house still, so there's a little Wi-Fi issue. But anyway, I have documents of Salem residents writing into Hollywood saying, no, we were not burnt, because this was going on. Hollywood was depicting, and I have producers saying, no, we can't do burnings or Salem residents are going to get angry. So you've got to do hangings. So this is a battle you've been fighting since, you know, 1896, since Hollywood's birth.
A really big one too is the Crucible. The amount of people that think that the Crucible was fact is astounding to me. And like, that's one of the biggest, other than the burnings, that's one of the biggest questions that I have to answer a lot is, you know, how much of the Crucible was true? And none of it was. Like, it wasn't.
That's why, Courtney, that people who are lovers of history, people who are lovers of the craft, what people who are marginalized, people who are on the fringes, we have a responsibility and a duty to stand up and say, no, that's not right. That is not part of it. I myself am marginalized as an out gay satanic witch. And, you know, people go, well, do you worship Satan? No, I don't worship literal Satan. I'm an independent. I do my own thing. I do believe in witchcraft. I do believe in ghosts. I do believe in magic. That's not something that most satanic organizations do. But I am a marginalized person. But as a whole, I can say no. Satanists do not eat babies. I mean, that's only the atheists. I'm just kidding.
So Scared and Alone rudely just brought up John Proctor in the comments because where is it? This of my night at the John Proctor house. But yeah, John Proctor, his name, all the names in the Crucible were the right names, but the story was wrong. And the amount of times that I've had to talk about that, but like, and it's not just me, like Heather said, it is the Salem community. So when, just really quick, this is a fun story that we used to tell on tour. If anyone's ever been to Salem during October, you'll understand why this feels ridiculous, but Bewitched was filmed in Salem for a period of time, for a couple episodes, because they had a fire in Hollywood. And then TV Land donated a statue of Samantha to the city of Salem that they put up. She's not a large woman. It's life size. She's a small woman. She's sitting on a little like moon, whatever. It's very small. You can't you expect it to be this like big giant spectacle the way people talk about it, but it's really a little tiny, you know, little life size statue of her. And it was to say thank you for letting us film there. And the residents of Salem, when that was being installed, were so angered by that they protested with signs. They put in so much effort because it commercialized the witchcraft too much.
Too late.
But like, go in not just like anytime, but like in October, and this is the tipping point, this statue. But it's true, it's any, like, the more I learned about it, the more I realized that it's just any way that Salem is never portrayed in Hollywood, like the history of these innocent people. Like, they were not witches, they were not practicing witches, they were innocent people whose lives were taken from them unfairly, unjustly, and Hollywood portrays them in all these ways and uses them for all these different reasons, and it's not okay, and it's dangerous to their memory, to the history of Salem, to everything. So while it's not the same as what, you know, happens with voodoo, you know, or other forms of witchcraft, it's that same feeling.
It's the same kind of thing with another film from the 70s. It was, what is it? Is it The Exorcist? No. Yeah, no, which is the one where it's Linda Blair.
Exorcist.
Is that The Exorcist? So they needed some way for her to contact a spirit world. They needed some way that she could be possessed and become this demon monster. And so they took I believe it was Mesopotamian god Pazuzu, and they turned him into, they literally demonized him. And they took the Ouija board, which is, of course, a spirit board. They've been around for hundreds of years, since the Fox sisters, and then forms of them even longer than that. But the spirit boards have been around. They have been used. And by the 70s, they were seen as kind of cheesy and jokey. But to this day, people will come in. I use the Ouija board, and they'll go, "Oh, I don't want to touch it because it has evil. It's demons. It's got evil in it." And I go, "No, it's not evil. It's anything can be misused. It's not evil. It's just communication. Whether you're using a spirit box or whether you're using a pendulum, whatever your tool that you're using, it's just a tool. You have a guest list. You welcome certain people in. It's not evil." Unless you're evil. Are you evil? Then I don't want you here.
So yeah, we have. Sorry.
No, I was going to say, well, that is actually, you're saying something needs to do about it. That's one reason is we do it in a light, fun way, which will get more people to listen. That's why we're here, in a sense, to look at this stuff in a fun, entertaining way, but go, this is wrong. We are real witches, real voodoo priestess going, this is not who we are. So to take it around, you know, once we are the biggest podcast live in the whole world, we are the ones fixing it, you guys. We are the ones. And
go ahead, Courtney.
Sorry, I just want really quick to hop on to what Richard-Lael just said about the Ouija boards. We have at the shop that my tours run out of, the Ouija board museum in the back, and the amount of people that come in and like glance their eyes on it and then go, oh, and then like back away from us because they couldn't possibly even look into the back room because it's evil. And it's just like, I respect everybody's beliefs. If that's what you believe, it's fine, but they're boards. Like, it's not inherently evil. It's cardboard, it's wood, it's, you know, whatever. And so I always say, like, you could do the same thing with a rock outside and a leaf and do the same thing, because it has nothing to do with the board. It's your intention that you're putting into it. And I just Colin commented, the only reason I avoid spirit boards is I'm never sure I'm using them right or closing them properly. That's valid, but being afraid of them because they're inherently evil makes me feel crazy.
And that is the normal thing. The seances I've been doing since I was 7 years old, I have used safely Ouija boards and spirit boards since I was 7 years old. I bring them with me if it's a way, but I won't use them if somebody's like, oh no, I'm afraid, because I don't want to bring fear into the circle. It's like, yes. Okay, we don't need right. it anyway. We're right. Opening the veil, the same thing. It's like, this is just a tool to use. So, but I think more people are in that school than not.
Yeah.
Whether the magical world or we're just talking muggles and mundane folks. And I think the 80s. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I think the 80s, I think the period of time this movie came out did a whole lot of damage in that way. And, just getting back to the movie itself and its grit, I think one of the things it does is is in a time where people were terribly afraid of spirit boards, and there was backlash against everything progressive that happened. If you think about the 70s, you think about the magical movement, you think about the civil rights movement, you think about everything that pushed forward. The 80s was a backlash, whether it was women, whatever. So this movie really threw all of that in our face. Now, I've read stories that the director was doing this on purpose to say, look, America, you guys are just messed up. These are all the things that are haunting you, so to speak, you know, and that was the point of the movie. But at the same time, it put all of these things, it fed those fears. It linked a religion to a magical religion, demonized it to Satanism. It showed nasty. It showed everything. It literally layered up layers of all the things that horrify people in the 80s. All the things.
Yeah, and we didn't have a really a response. I mean, I took a workshop with one of the famous Babalawos, John Mason, and it was about whether or not we still need to keep the African traditional religions, voodoo and everything, in the basement. And he just kept saying that the reason it's in the basement is because that's where it was safe, you know, and he's in his 70s now, you know, and a lot of the younger generation were like, no, we can come out and do it. And he was just like, are you sure it's still safe? You know, and honestly, I'm not sure it's still safe. You know, I look at witches, and they were very blessed to have people like Phyllis Curott and the Witches Anti-Defamation League and other people speak out against this. But there hasn't really, I used to joke I was the Voodoo Anti-Defamation League, but there aren't really that many people until maybe the past 6 months speaking out against this. You know, they're supposed to try and put a Voodoo Donuts here in New Orleans. So they've been asking some of the priestesses, nobody asked me, but they've been asking some of them what they think. And people are like, no, you can't commodify our religion like that. You can't cheapen it. It's not cute or funny to stick pins in your donut and make this comparison between my religion. But I don't think we're there yet. You know, I watch the Food Network, and there's voodoo dolls and other ridiculous voodoo symbols on the Halloween episode, you know, and it's just disrespectful to me. And I think that the movie, it's as beautiful as it is and as interesting as it is, what it's doing is demonizing not just the religion, it's demonizing women, it's demonizing specifically young women, which is really troublesome to me. You know what I mean? Like you said, that we were used to looking at her as Denise Huxtable, and now she's got her clothes off and she's rubbing chicken blood on her.
She says she's 17.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's
and she's already had a kid.
And it's demonized, and it's also a continuation of the demonization of Black and brown bodies within magic, which doesn't really start to change until the 90s. And it's not perfect, and that's something I do discuss in the book. I don't get into voodoo specifically, but I get into that. And this is another movie where you see that happening. And it follows through a very nice storyline from the 70s. There was a blip from the 70s to the 80s where this happens, where it disappears, but then it starts happening again in the 80s, in the late 80s, when magic starts to come and they start demonizing women, they start the backlash using magic. You start to reinvigorate this use of brown and black bodies as a way of indicating evil. And that's what you're seeing here again. As good and as deep and as rich as this movie is, this is one of the problems with it. And, you know, again, 1987.
So we're looking now it's 2023. I don't know what all the new, we know that which is a little bit getting better, the wee bit. Is it getting better for voodoo yet? Or is that like next down the line? Are they getting any more other than one documentary some guy made?
Yeah, right. I mean, I think it's still a big taboo subject. I think treating it responsibly and respectfully still is unheard of in Hollywood anyway, although who knows what that's going to hell in a handbasket anyway. But
they're all on strike.
Yeah, no,
but
I know. Who knows what's going to happen? I think with that.
I've seen improvement. I think when we talked about there's a huge difference in the representation in this movie versus American Horror Story Coven.
Yes,
there's a huge difference in the representation. It's not exact, but there's a difference. Is it? I mean, Lilith, you can speak to the specifics, obviously, that I can't. But there's
yeah,
a change.
I mean, I still think there's this sort of Papa Legba equating the devil and evil, and even Marie Laveau. You know, again, it's just enough to, oh yes, why she's a hairdresser or whatever. Oh yeah, that's true. The whole thing is true. I think it's still just enough to hang on. It's not. They threw in other horrors, so it's not like that was the only horror we're looking at. But I don't think it's a lot better. I really don't.
Yeah, really.
I don't.
Yeah,
no.
That's unfortunate. I thought that there was a improvement there. We'll have to have a chat before I start writing about this clearly. And this is the exact reason why I don't go into this in my book, because there's aspects of it I don't know without deep conversations with Lilith Dorsey.
I will say though, as a Satanist myself, I really, 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 really loved Robert De Niro as Louis Cyphre. Every time he was on screen, I was entertained and I laughed and I was rooting for the devil. But of course, that's easy for me to do because that's what I do. Even though it is, I would love for people to be able to separate the devil from the Christian religion, because as a whole, he's just a great, funny character. And even predating, one of my favorite things is the Egyptian god Bes. And he was, unlike his counterparts, he wasn't worshipped by the states, but he was the god of professional ladies. He was the god of drink. He was the god of music. He was the god of fun. And he would always be in profile. I mean, the other gods were in profile. He was face on. And he had this long beard, and he had a cat, a leopard around his shoulders. And he was also the god who made children laugh. Incidentally, he's the god that inspired Pan, because there was trade from Greece to Egypt. And I love that. I love that fun little devil. I love him. And so Robert De Niro as Louis Cyphre, bravo.
But De Niro's good in everything. That was beautifully cast in my thoughts. He was just beautifully cast. So I want to go back, not even about the movie. When we said Lisa Bonet, it tumbled her career. Did it tumble it down the drain, her career? Did she? So she really lost. She didn't have a career after that? Or did it just make her being a grown-up? No? I don't know.
They didn't like Cosby, even though we know what Cosby was now in hindsight. But Cosby was trying to have this squeaky clean show. He was trying to be this squeaky clean. He had endorsements for pudding. He was trying to have this sort of family thing, and to have the woman who's playing his daughter, it was chaos. And then the problem was back then is that people would cast you, and then they would cast you in that role forever. And so with her, she was no longer cast as that wholesome family person. It was really hard for her to get cast, because they could only see her as the Cosby Show.
Yeah, and I think that he did move her to another show,
A Different World,
and that didn't A Different World. Yeah,
mm-hmm.
and I believe she did some other things that eventually he fired her, and that was the end of it. And so that was the end of her Cosby reign.
Wasn't she expecting a child? And he said yes, but but Claire Huxtable is not pregnant. So you're not pregnant. And then he fired her for that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Imagine the audacity of that man.
No. Sorry. Oh my. All right. Well, we're going on time, and we haven't even done check-ins or let everybody know who Lilith is yet. So what we do now is
we need to talk to Lilith.
Oh yeah. Do you want to say anything, your thoughts about the film before we go into one's up, one's down?
No, that's fine. I think I got it all out. I do love the movie, but it's really problematic from a voodoo standpoint.
A lot of the movies we watch are. I think That's why we're here. That's why we're here. Okay, so everybody, and you guys in our studio audience, we want your vote. Wands up, wands down for Angel Heart.
I can't find my
wand. Oh, thumbs up. That'll work.
Right, that's good. Wait.
Wands can be. Oh, there we go. That's awesome.
Down.
What's up?
We got fire in those wands. Of course we do. I've got wands down, wands up, wands neutral. It's pretty big. Wands up, mostly for Louis Cyphre. Okay, so we're leaning towards wands up, but there is a little bit of mix and a little bit of neutral. Wands down. Yeah, it's a little bit of both on this one. But again, I'm looking at the movie, not as, and I got involved in the color, in the heat, in the all that, except for the animal part. So, all right, we don't know what we're gonna do next week. I don't even know if I'm going to be here, but everybody else will be here. So we'll just have to announce that midway. But while we have a few minutes left, why doesn't everybody check in and say what's going on? Let's start with our beautiful guest, Lilith Dorsey. Why don't you tell everybody just a wee bit about you and anything you have coming up that people can know about and where they can find you?
Oh, all right. Well, I'm a voodoo priestess. I'm an author. I'm a filmmaker. I'm a choreographer. I do lots of different things. I'm from Brooklyn. Now I live in New Orleans, and I got lots of stuff coming up. I'm going to be with Patti this weekend at Hex Fest, and then the weekend after I'm going to be in Connecticut at Harvest Gathering, and then my friends in New York can see me. I'm going to be back at an NYU documentary reunion. I'm so excited, and I have a new book coming out, but I'm not going to talk about that. But I love you, Heather. Thank you.
Well, listen, her first book, I worked with her on this one. It's brilliant. Water Magic, The Elements of Witchcraft. It was the first one in a series, all about using water and magic. Brilliant.
I'm going to be smashing the order button on that one.
Thank you. All right, Courtney.
That's me. Okay, guys, I have some things to discuss. First of all, real quick, I went on I have a mystery control haul, as you know I always do. Check out the new hat. My other hat was like a year old and disgusting, and this is a brand new fresh hat that you can get on mysterycontrol.com. And then Patti, we know that I have some other ones, but I got a new. Hold it the right way.
No way.
Power panties.
I like the boxer briefs because they're comfy, and I can wear them to bed as like bed shorts. But there's like the dragon energy, like the F around and find out energy. Need it. So these, just holding them in my hand, I'm like, come at me. Like, I everywhere. There's that. But now, guys, I have a big reveal for you. As we all know, Not a Doll has been not a friend for me. And you guys tease me constantly all the time about, or, especially Jason. I'm sad Jason's not here for this, but that Not a Doll is moving and everybody sends me messages about Not a Doll and all this stuff. So I thought if Not a Doll is going to be lonely, I'm not going to be its friend. So I got it a family.
Oh my God.
So Not a Doll, this is Not a Doll, originally came from Big Lots. And now there's a whole line of Not a Dolls that all make noise and all say creepy things. And I'll do this one. This one rides its bike, like actually rides its bike around. This one rocks on its rocking horse. Okay. These ones do a seesaw. This one is the most horrifying thing I've ever seen in my life. It swings. I don't know where the button is.
Okay.
It kicks its legs.
You're officially a doll collector.
No, these are Halloween decorations.
Patti?
Watch what this is.
Doll collector, right, Patti?
Oh my God,
She's a doll collector. She's a
watch
doll
what she
collector.
does.
Doll collector.
Hold on.
When I was a kid, my brother used to have action figures, and I would say to him, he would laugh at me for I would play with Barbies because I wanted to dress them, and so my brother would say, no, I'm not playing with dolls. They're action figures. And I said, I had to look up the definition of a doll, and it is anything that looks like a human in miniature form is a doll.
I was not listening to anything you said.
Thank you.
This is not a doll's.
She's showing her dolls.
This is not a doll's sister because they're the same. This is the boy version and this is the girl version. So this is where it started. And then because as everyone who watches me knows, I have impulse control issues, all the rest came along. So this one does the same. Look, they're like twins. But they are all battery operated Halloween decorations. So nobody can have anything to say about it.
You notice that she's pulling the head off of her teddy bear.
I know. I love that. They both do that. This one is my favorite. Look how cute this one is. Watch what he does.
Don't say that aloud in front of Not a Doll.
He plays peekaboo. I'm gonna be honest. This one freaks me out a little bit. I kind of regret this one. Because I don't know where its button is. Hold on. Oh God. Oh, there we go.
Why do you feel so scared? All I wanted to do was play with them. I don't want to stand.
I don't like this one.
Play with me. I'm so lonely.
But I like the peekaboo one. So,
Well, congratulations on all your new dolls.
yeah, it's like a whole family.
It is a family.
It's a doll collection.
No, it's a Halloween decoration collection. It's from the Halloween collection at Big Lots. That's where I got them. If you would like to purchase your own Not a Doll, Big Lots.
Okay.
That's where I got them.
I'm going with Big Lots.
After Courtney's dolls. Okay, Richard-Lael, you want to check it?
Well, I am easily found. I'm anywhere gentlemen psychics are sold. TheGentlemanPsychic.com, Facebook, Instagram, all of the YouTubes. Also, I will be in Atlanta on the 2nd for the Debauchery Ball. Also, I'll be doing Scared and Alone whenever it comes back. I'm here in New Orleans. I'll be doing readings here also in my house. And also I will be at, what is it called? Apothecary. I'll be doing readings there. And if you would like to buy a devil pillow of me with my face on it, Courtney has hers right there. You can go and use code Richard-Lael, and it'll give you, I can't remember what the discount is, but there is another perfect casting as the devil.
Thank you. All right, Heather.
Well, I am not going to be doing any traveling until the end of October when I head back up to Minneapolis for more fun at Llewellyn, where I work as I am an editor at Llewellyn. Between now and then, I'll be hanging around, hopefully seeing Richard-Lael when he's in Atlanta. And other than that, I am doing, you can see my articles, go to my website. I do couple articles a month on occult topics covering witchcraft and all kind of things in that realm, and working with my great authors, of which Lilith just dropped a little bit about. In fact, I get to read her next book next week, so to see how she's doing, we'll get to announce that soon enough. And all my other wonderful authors, so I get to do that. That's like a dream come true job, so I love that. And you can see, if you go to my Facebook and socials, you can see the books I'm working on when they come out, as they come out. And I've got some really great titles coming out this fall, so watch for that, because y'all going to want to buy all of them.
Yeah, thank you. All right. Thank you, Heather. So you're going to see us everywhere. I am actually going to be at Hex Fest with Lilith this upcoming weekend. Then I'm heading off to, oh, wow, what happened? Are you still, something happened. It's doing it.
We're here.
Okay, my whole screen went away. All right, I'm going to be at Hex Fest. Then I'm headed down way up Michigan. I'm going to be at Michigan Paracon. 3 events in September. I've got a little witchy weekend in Albuquerque, and now I've got this thing at the Baraboo Inn in Wisconsin. And then I am heading to Massachusetts for Mass Paracon. And then it gets crazy in October. But you can find everything at pattinegri.com. Like us all, follow us all, because that makes a difference. On all our social medias, we are all there. Tell us what you like. Tell us what movies you want to see. We want your opinion. We want your votes on that. So other than that, we are about to the end of everything. And we have one more thing to do.
Well, we should talk about before
we
we
have the podcast.
Oh, the podcast. Oh, and it's not a good. We have this is the podcast edition of this now. This has only been on YouTube, and then we do it. Now we're a grown-up podcast. Everywhere you see podcasts, you can start seeing this, which is Movie Coven podcast edition. So if you miss any episodes, we're going to start putting them. There's a few there now, and we are honored. Our producer Rob is there. So check it out everywhere that you like podcasts. Check out mine, Witching Hour. Check out everybody. We all have YouTube. So come play with us. And let's let people know what about witches and voodoo and all these magical arts that Hollywood gets wrong. And maybe we're loud enough, they'll get it right one day.
Let's hope.
Let's hope. And on that note, 1, 2, 3.